wonderful response of lots of questions sent in and lots of people interested in joining. So welcome. I am Beth Hendler-Grunt, and I am the CEO and founder of Next Great Step. And I'm very excited to welcome you all to our open office hours session. We do these sessions a few times during the year. My goal is to do them even more. But if you are just joining, welcome so much to the webinar. You'll notice I launched a short poll. It's 2 questions. If you would be so kind to fill it out, just so I understand what your role is in this process and what's on your mind, that would be fantastic. Also, to let you know, we are recording. So as part of joining tonight, you will get the recording, or if you were not able to make it, we will send the recording out as well. You'll notice throughout the evening, my colleagues are on and they will be posting some content in the chat about resources. What's really nice is a lot of our free resources that if you get one, you'll have access to all of them. So if you download something having to do with how to use LinkedIn or the great resume tips or the college to career roadmap, it gives you access to everything. So we'll be putting those links into the chat as well as links to our information if you'd like to schedule a consultation or access to my new book. And we'll talk about all of that. All right, fabulous. Sounds like we have a good number of people here. So as I said, I'm the CEO and founder of Next Great Step, and I launched this business 8 years ago. And it really came out of the need from when I was in the corporate world where I was working with CEOs and their executive teams and helping them with strategic planning and sales performance. And the executives would say to me, I'd love to hire somebody right out of school, but I'm not going to. I'm going to pass because I don't think they understand the scope of the problems that we're dealing with, and I don't want to have to babysit. And likewise, I became of the age where my friends would say, I don't get it. My kid went to a great school or they had a great internship and they cannot get a job. And what I've done is applied a lot of the same strategies that we work with CEOs in terms of how do you have a strategy? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you articulate your value? And those are the same things that our young adults need in terms of launching themselves into their internship or first job and beyond. So very excited to launch it. I am also the mom of a recent grad. My older son graduated class of 2021. So in the heart of COVID, he's in grad school now. And my younger one is a sophomore in college. So I am living this with you real time. I totally get the struggles of as a parent and trying to navigate this and guide your kid. So I really sympathize with all the challenges that I know when I talk to parents every single day. I'm also excited to share that I am an Amazon best-selling author. I recently launched my new book called The Next Great Step, The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. And this is really the guide and the resource that enables parents to understand what's happening and help navigate the process with their young adult and help them be successful in getting the job they deserve. So we'll put a bunch of these links into the chat as well. And tonight, the primary agenda is as follows. I really want to talk about what are some of the challenges that you're facing as a parent or a student in this job search, and what are the perspectives of what everybody's thinking. I want to talk about the outlook for the class of 2023. Doesn't matter whether you're graduating this year or you graduated last year, anyone who's in a seeking role. And I'll talk about the industry trends and what we're seeing, because I know the market is a little crazy right now. I will offer some tips and guidance, but specifically, I really want to be here to answer your questions. So if you have specific questions, I know a number of you have already sent them to me. I have them notated here, but if you have not sent me your questions, please put them into the Q&A section on the bottom of your screen, and I will do my very best to answer them as we go along and get to as many questions as I can. All righty. So when I see some people are already putting some things there. Oh, the chat is disabled. Oh, interesting. Hold on a second. Let me just see if I can. I don't know why the chat is disabled, but you know what? If you have something to say, put it in the Q&A. I thanks for letting me know, Rachel. And any commentary, just put into the Q&A because I think that is working. Okay. So let's just talk about this for a minute. This whole process was supposed to be easy, right? You send your kid to college to get an education, they get a job upon graduating. What happened? Right now, what we're seeing is a lot of young adults are graduating and they're unprepared for the job market. Some statistics are that, 2 million students will graduate each year. They're graduating right now. 87% of them believe they are ready for work, but only 50% of hiring managers actually agree. The jobless rate for new college grads, unfortunately, has surpassed that for all workers every month since January of 2021, and the pandemic clearly did not help. 2/3 of millennials and Gen Zers who moved back home during the pandemic still live there, and the economy and economic reasons cause that as well. There is this big disconnect between what employers expect for hiring and the skill set that recent grads think they have for the workplace. Our grads are frustrated, they're overwhelmed. Parents are concerned, they want to maybe haven't looked for a job in a long time, want to find the right way to guide them, and employers need people as well. So we have this problem. So here is the perspective of what parents are thinking, of what our students and grads are thinking, and what employers are thinking as well. So just to give you some perspective, as I said before, for parents, we feel a little bit like it's not what they promised, right? We went on a campus tour and the college said, oh, you're going to have a great job when you finish this academic institution. It doesn't always work out the way we thought. We thought our kids would go to career services. And the reality is that on average, 4 in 10 only go to career services. We also thought that life skills like networking would be taught or be part of the curriculum, and that's not always the case. We thought maybe we'll make some introductions to connections to friends of ours, but sometimes our kids are not ready for that, or they kind of blow it. Maybe they didn't have the practice and the preparation, and then maybe one of the connections that might have been someone that could get them to a job decides to pass. One of the most common things I hear from parents is the commentary of, I wish I knew. I wish I knew how early the process starts, but I'm not sure how to help. And I just want to assure you that it's not too late. It's never too late. From the perspective of our students and grads, they start off feeling confident. They were told that, oh, if you go study this, or this is the perfect major, that you'll be in demand. And they're also of the generation where everybody wins or everybody gets a trophy. So they're not used to failure. So very often they'll apply online and then slowly start to realize it's a black hole. They don't hear back, or if they do, they don't always progress in the interview process, or think maybe it's just more is better. Maybe it's a numbers game that I gotta, throw more applications out there. Or they think sometimes if I just fix my resume, if I just have the right keywords, then everything will be fine. Then I'll get found. Or sometimes they really question, like, what should I do with my life? Just because they studied a certain major doesn't necessarily mean that's what they want to do. They may feel pressure from parents or their friends. They start to question anything like, do I have the right skills? Do I have what's needed? And mental health is a real factor. 40% of young adults have reported feeling anxiety or depression. And how do we separate that from the normal setbacks of a job search? They're scared and afraid, and they're not sure how to move forward. And then we have the employer's perspective. Right now, there's still 10 million job openings and 8 million job seekers. They're struggling to find the right talent and the right skills. And as I said earlier, they don't want to babysit. They are all about, how can you help me? How can you help me in my business versus a student coming in saying, well, I deserve this. They don't really want to hear that, or they don't want to hear that, oh, I want to be promoted in a job and someone hasn't put the work in yet. They want to hear that someone is solely focused on helping them and solve their problems and help them accomplish their goals. And they want to see more real world experiences in their candidates. They want to see internships. But ultimately, the good news is they want to hire young talent. They know they need that for their businesses. So how do we bridge that gap? What is this next step? So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the market right now. So I'm going to kind of start with the bad news, just to kind of get that over with, because if you haven't read the headlines, you're probably well aware of that. So, the bad news right now is that we've seen that, tech has scaled back, whether it's Amazon, Spotify, Meta, Microsoft, Salesforce. So we're just a few of many tech firms that are scaling back on hiring, probably overhired or too aggressive during the internship. And we have seen situations where internships or full-time job offers have been delayed or rescinded. We're also seeing situations where sometimes young adults are being laid off after barely a year of employment. Many are starting over, where companies are, rethinking their direction. COVID, it was a real setback, and especially for the class of 2023. I mean, this is the class that experienced some impact of COVID every year of school because it happened when they were freshmen. So they're really the first class to graduate where they've had fewer internships. They've been facing more academic or mental health challenges than pre-COVID grads. And the average time to land a job in 2023 is now increased to 6 months from 5.5 months last year. So there's this, disconnect that continues between employer expectations and what college grads think in terms of readiness. And what employers have said that they see the skills that college grads lack the most: interpersonal skills, problem-solving skills, leadership, written and oral communication. So that's kind of the state of what's happening from a challenging standpoint. But let's talk about the good news. There is positive news. So let's talk about that. The good news that according to NACE, which is the National Association of Colleges and Employers, that employers do plan to hire more 2023 graduates compared to class of 2022, a little bit more, about 4% more. We also see where people are hiring. Government agencies are looking to hire 36% more entry-level software workers. Maybe those same software workers who might have gone to a tech firm, companies still need that skill set. The construction sector is looking for 28% more. LinkedIn has seen a 21% increase in job postings for advertising specifically skills and responsibilities instead of qualifications. So we'll talk more about that. And I think that really gives opportunities to students who really understand their own skill set as opposed to what your major was or what you went to school for. If you know you have a certain skill, I think there's a real opportunity there. The top 5 industries for growth, according to Fast Company and the Wall Street Journal right now, are education, healthcare, every aspect of healthcare, whether it's an administration, actually delivering patient care, pharmaceutical, the leisure and hospitality area. It's also growing tremendously. Makes sense, people. There's still that demand for travel and exploration. There's still a need in logistics, whether it's for expertise in supply chain. And there's still that need in sales, marketing, customer service. And as I mentioned earlier, in construction and building. So those are the areas that right now where we see the most growth. The other really interesting areas, I think, to understand and be aware of about things that could impact the job search is ChatGPT. So if you have not heard of ChatGPT, you should. It's this AI platform that enables you to, it's like a more advanced than Google. You can ask it questions. You can ask it to write your resume. You can ask it to write you a cover letter by putting in certain information. So we as a firm, we're also trying to figure out the best way to utilize it as a structure. So, and employers, I think, are going to integrate more AI into the screening process. So this is something that we all need to learn about and understand how it's being used. I think also too, even at TikTok, I know there's lots of controversy of whether it'll stay or go in this country, but for right now, TikTok is the content for brands is like a hot new job. Social media platforms continue to explode in popularity, and brands are hiring college students and other young people to develop new content. And TikTok is becoming a platform where people are either looking for job or job advice. We have gotten on the bandwagon. We are on TikTok as well, and you can find us at Next Grade Step on TikTok. We actually have 2 sites, one for students and young job seekers, and one actually for parents. So one is called Next Grade Step and one is called Launch Your Grad. But there's a lot of people with eyes on that platform. So just to kind of be aware of it. So what do we do? What do we do with all of this information of what's happening and the market keeps changing and the dynamic? I think the only thing that I know right now for 2023 that I can predict is it's constant change. And with uncertainty, the only one thing that we can control is our own actions and how we as parents or as young job seekers really control what we do in terms of how we pursue opportunities. And what we found is that how one prepares how one presents themselves is really critical for success in the job journey. You need to differentiate yourself. It is a competitive market out there. It is absolutely competitive, but there are absolutely jobs. I literally just this morning, I was thrilled. One of our clients just got offered 2 job offers, one by the NFL and one by Rutgers athletic team. There's jobs, but you have to be really strategic about pursuing it and going about it. You need to understand the goals and objectives of a company and how you can add value and how you can help solve a problem. And you need to practice and you need to not wing it, the first time you interact with someone. So all of those pieces are really important in helping somebody to stand out, and you need to persevere. One email, one call, one follow-up will not be enough. It's how do you keep being persistent in a professional way to make yourself stand out, and don't sabotage yourself, because sometimes the process is long or a little overwhelming, and it just takes a lot of perseverance. All right, so I am going to pause. I know I've been talking quite a bit. Let me jump over to the Q&A, and I have a couple of things here. So let me look at okay, I might jump around here, some of the questions. So Mary, thanks for your question. It says, is there a trick to applying for jobs through Indeed or other job search engines? My son has applied to dozens and has heard very little. That's a great question. So there is this mystery, or that people believe that when you go to a job search engine, whether it's Indeed, LinkedIn, Handshake, Google Job, whatever, it doesn't matter, any name, any online site, more does not make it better. I get this all the time. Well, I applied to 20, 30, 100, 200 jobs. It's actually not a numbers game. You have to remember that the first screening probably is some kind of AI. So they're searching for keywords. Very often a young candidate is not going to have all the right keywords, nor should they, because they went to college and that was your job to be educated. My philosophy about how you actually go about looking for the job, it should not be just the job board. If you see a job on a job board and you feel like I match up to it about at least 60%, 60 to 70%, of what the job requirements show. So if they list, all the skills, and you want to look at your own skills and your own resume, it needs to at least 60 to 70, does not have to be 100%. So you can apply, but you cannot do that in isolation. You need to do a couple of things. One, you need to find somebody who works at the company, who's willing to have an informational networking conversation. The best people are those that are fellow alumni, because they tend to be the most friendly and the most willing. So if a student can find someone else from their school who works at the company, and by the way, you can easily search it on LinkedIn. I'll teach you about that in a moment. That's one of my favorite ways. The other thing to do is you go and you find the name of the HR person who's hiring, or an HR person who is in that organization, and you reach out and say, I just want to share with you, I'm reaching out to let you know, I just applied for this job. I'm very excited about it. I am confident that my skills of, you want to X, Y, and Z would really add value to your organization. And I look forward to speaking with you further. I appreciate connecting. I just submitted my application. You need to let a human know that you've actually applied, because you need a human person to actually go and grab your resume or your application and put it on the top of a pile, as opposed to it being in that black hole. It can't be done in isolation. My primary suggestion is through really targeted networking, is that you want to find the people who have the jobs that you want. Again, find a fellow alumni who went to the same school, maybe had the same major, find someone who did that, message them on LinkedIn saying, I'm really impressed with your career path. Like you, I'm a fellow alum from this university. I'd like to talk with you for 15 minutes to learn more about how you got there, and just to have a conversation, not coming across as desperate, not coming across as like, I really need a job, but that type of relationship building and starting to target the right people. Even if they are not hiring, they're going to tell you who to talk to get to that are doing the hiring. So I hope that answers your question. Yeah, job boards are tough. There's this mystique where people just think that, look, I'm just going to spend all my time on them. It's not a great use of time. It's really not. You have to be really strategic, and you're better speaking to people over video, on the phone, in person, to forge a relationship, because they will actually tell you what it takes to get into that role. So hopefully that helps answer that question. So thanks, Mary, for asking that. The webinar keeps stalling. I hope it's okay. All right. Hopefully, if there's an issue, let me know. Okay. How do you follow up when your name was submitted to the leadership team for the next interview? Because you already passed the first interview in the screening, but it's been 2 weeks and you were not contacted, and you don't have contact info for the leadership team. So I'm all about being persistent. And by the way, like, Google's a fabulous thing. Almost everybody's on LinkedIn. If you can figure it out, I think you need to be resourceful. So if you interviewed and you have not heard back, first of all, you need to go back to the main contact to express interest. I mean, let's go back to etiquette of how you follow up after an interview. When you have an interview, you should be sending them a thank you note within 24 hours. If you don't have the contact information, so this is a lesson for the future, don't ever leave an interview without getting somebody's email address or contact information before you leave to say, I really appreciate your time. I'd like to send you a follow-up note. Can you share with me your email? So just to remember for next time, you always want to ask. But if you didn't, or you forgot, or if they're saying, I don't share that information, fair enough, then you submit to the person who may be coordinated for you. Could be an assistant, someone more administrative, could be the more first round interview person, and send a note to them within 24 hours. But by the way, you can find so many people, like, go to LinkedIn. I bet you they're on there. You can message them directly through there or through a connection note, or you can go to Google, and there's other tricks to find people's email. If you know someone else's email in the company, is probably going to follow the same format. But I would not let time pass without communicating with somebody on the team, even if it wasn't the direct person. My philosophy is you follow up every 7 days until you get an answer, yes or no. Now, 7 days, as you could say, I'm following up to our interview last week. I'm very excited about the role. It's even better if you can find something relevant to talk about, like, I noticed this article in the news and I thought this would be of value to you or relevant to the role. I'm very excited about the opportunity and I look forward to speaking soon. So you're constantly adding values. You're not just saying, hey, did I get the job? Did I get the job? You're also showing that you're thinking about what's maybe important to the company, or that you're reading the news, or that you're being current, and that you are being proactive to stay in touch. And by the way, sometimes it's a test. Sometimes they want to see how persistent you are. I'll say, especially for sales roles, or sometimes they want, or people are just busy. And the ones don't have to be the most qualified. Sometimes the ones that are the most persistent are the ones who are getting hired. So I would find somebody, find a person, don't let it go. Keep going. I hope that helps, Tim. Okay, and you'll see also Rachel did post all of our channels, our social media channels. Feel free to follow us there. Okay, is there let's go back up. Okay, so when offered a job, how do I negotiate a higher starting pay when I don't have a lot of experience? So, you need to put yourself in the shoes of the employer, right? Pretend you're the CEO. And you need to understand, well, how does that company make money? What is the metric? And maybe it's not money. Maybe it's, is it customer satisfaction? What's the metric that company is measured on? Because coming into an opportunity, especially someone who's young out of school, I'm all for negotiating, by the way. I absolutely, but you can't just be pulling numbers out of the air. A couple things you can do. One, there's a couple of websites. You can go to salary.com and you can see what the current salary is for that type of role based on the geography of where you live, because clearly New York City is going to be higher than maybe in Oklahoma or other parts of the country. So you need to understand what the range is for that role, for the experience and that kind of job, and based on the demographic and the location. But the other thing that you should do is understand, how do they measure success? What does that look like for the organization? Because the more that you can show that you can impact how you help them measure success, the more willing that they might be to pay you more money. But it needs to be quantified. I mean, clearly, let's just say if they're offering, I don't know, a $60,000 salary and you say, oh, well, I want 75,000. I mean, how are you coming up with that extra money? Do you have to commute? Are you agreeing to certain results? Do you have certain experience where you've quantified it in the past? If you don't have the experience and you don't have a way to show how you're offering, I mean, you can ask, but I think you need to be aware of that's what they're thinking about, is how can you help them make more money? And then it starts to quantify them ultimately giving you more money. So I'm all about negotiating, but you have to really think through all the different ways, whether it's through, by the way, you've got to calculate, the benefits and all the other things they might be offering, or whether it's time off. So there's ways to negotiate for things that are not pure dollars, but it might be valuable in other ways. So I hope that helps to give you some sense from a negotiation standpoint. Okay. All right, let's come back. All right, so I know there was another person. I see you, Peggy. I wasn't clear of the exact question. I know you sent me something that you have a recent grad, completed an internship in sound technician, wants seeking tips to improve chances of how in terms of internships, further education. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of questions there. Let's just say this. When you're looking up for a job, you want to understand what skills do you have, and also what skills can you leverage into another role. Or if you're aiming for a certain role, I mean, that's also the value of having networking conversations, is to talk to someone who's doing the job, because then you start to understand, oh, you know what? They have these certain skill set and I don't have that yet. So maybe you can say, how do you get that? Do I need a certification? Do I need to go back to school? Do I need to do a part-time job, or what's called a micro internship, where you do it for a week or two, you do a project? But you need to understand what skills are needed for that role before you say, hey, I'm your person. You have to know, do you have that skill set? Now, very often we get students who come out of school say, well, I didn't do a heck of a lot, or I went to class. Of course, that was your job. But I think it's so important. I think sometimes our students forget that you're learning skills an employer needs. You're learning teamwork. You're learning how to be, leadership, or in the classroom. Maybe you worked volunteer. You were part of a club. You were part of a team. You maybe had to persevere. Maybe you dealt with conflict. So all of those, you just have to kind of recall the type of things that you did even in the classroom and your university experience, and how that translates to the work experience. So it's okay too if you don't have the exact experience. Maybe you delivered pizza and you scooped ice cream. But by the way, maybe because of scooping ice cream, you have great customer service skills, or you know how to solve a problem when somebody's upset that their ice cream fell, or you know how to optimize your route to get to the most houses in the shortest amount of time when you deliver the pizzas. I think we just need to realize that as a young adult, you have so much more to offer than you think you do. It's just a matter of putting it together in a way that shows an employer that you're self-aware and that you know what you've done from that skill set and how it potentially could help them. So I hope that kind of gives some insight, but Peggy, happy to speak further. Maybe, click on the link about getting a consult if you want to learn more. Okay, there's a couple other questions that also came in, and let me just share them because I captured those earlier. One of the questions that someone asked me was, are you seeing new grad hiring slowdowns? And in terms of, are there more layoffs and budget cuts in some industries? So I kind of mentioned that earlier in terms of the tech sector clearly is cutting back. I think they kind of overdid it during the pandemic in terms of their estimation of what was needed. And obviously we've gone through a lot of change, even changes in regulation. But I think, as I said earlier, in the industries like healthcare and construction and travel and tourism, I mean, those are opportunities. And just because you might be technical and you may want to work for a tech company, people still need technical skills to translate and then go to other organizations. So I think that's what we talked about. And then you asked if certain industries were hit harder. So I think I did that. We talked about, actually, one thing you mentioned here in this question about the need for accounting. There is a huge demand for accountants and accounting. So as I've talked to actually another recruiter recently. So if you know of anyone going into accounting, there's a huge demand for that skill set. For some reason, maybe it's dropped off. It's not maybe as glamorous as people thought in the past, or other roles, but huge demand for accounting. Okay, another question that I got was, my daughter recently attended a biotech career fair where she said this was one of the worst years for biotech hiring, considering that was her major. Are we seeing that in the marketplace? I mean, maybe biotech is, correlating obviously to tech. So we're seeing those same challenges. But again, that's such obviously, clearly, in order to have that skill, you have to be so analytical, know how to do research, clearly have the understanding of bio. Clearly, there's a huge need in the healthcare field. Even if, medicine is not her future, I think there's tremendous opportunities in terms of what's needed for development, whether it's in pharmaceuticals, testing, analysis, and research. So I think it's a matter of just learning to pivot a little bit in terms of what might, what you think is happening. And then there was another question here about taking a gap year. So the daughter graduated in May of 22, decided to take a gap year and did traveling, and now wants to maybe do another one. And mom is concerned, is it bad that if she has to explain 2 years? So here's the thing with gap year. And first of all, I really believe since COVID, things have just changed. I mean, people know that it's just not the way it was. We had a lot of kids who deferred or took a year off or decided to wait until school was back in person. So I think the important piece is, what were you doing during that time? Were you learning something? Were you volunteering? Were you gaining skills in any way? And I think that's what's most important. I'm not going to tell you whether you take a year or two. I think it's a matter of, what are you aiming for when you're done with the gap years, or are you just procrastinating the job search because you're terrified, which sometimes is the case too, which is a lot of people go to grad school too. I see that. They're just trying to procrastinate the inevitable of getting a job. I think there needs to be an understanding of like, well, what are you hoping to get out of this second gap year or the gap year in general? And where do you want to be when it's done? Now, you may not have a clear picture, but maybe to at least set some goals of, during this year, I will, even though I might be traveling, like I'm going to take a mini certification, or I'm going to make sure I volunteer in this way. So at least you can be gaining and learning new skills throughout the process. So when you come out of it, you can share, what you've learned and how you want to leverage that into a new role. So I hope that helps. All right. I love all these questions. So let me come back here. And Rachel, I know she's on too. Can you offer the links about the resources? I think just want to make sure we get that in the chat. Okay. So one of the questions here is, so now that my child has graduated, can he still look for an internship to give him experience since he didn't do this during school? And if so, where do you look for internships? So great question. And it's happened to so many of our kids, my son included, where he had this really great internship lined up. It got canceled, and he ended up doing an internship when he graduated. And that was just the right thing for him. And I see that more and more. So internships do not have to be reserved just for the time when you're in school or during the school year, whether it's the summer, fall, winter break, whenever. I see many more opportunities that students graduate and they feel like, you know what, I haven't really had enough real world experience, and you absolutely can go get an internship. In terms of finding them, I'll say it's kind of my same philosophy with jobs. Now, of course, you can look through your school. A lot of schools use Handshake. But it's the same thing too. It's like, where do you want to be? Forget the internship program. Like, what kind of work or experience do you want? What are those companies? I mean, I'm all about being in control of the process. Like, what are the top 10 companies that you want? What are the top 3 or 4 industries? What are the people? Who are the people that are doing the role that you'd want? And whether it's in an internship or potentially full-time job. So I think understanding where you want to be versus just being at the mercy of whatever happens to be posted online that day, I really want you to be more in control of that. One of the methods of internships that I really like, I have this, a colleague, the company called Parker Dewey. Parker Dewey is known for micro internships. And I don't know if Rachel, if you're listening, can you maybe stick their link in the Q&A? Parker Dewey partners with companies that need interns to do project-based internships. These internships could last like 5 days or 2 weeks. So what's really nice is that you're doing real legitimate work, project-based work but it's not the whole summer, or it's not for 14 weeks. You can do it for a few weeks. You could do a couple internships at a time. So that's a really good resource, parkerdewey.com, if you want to look there. I would also, there are job boards for internships, which you can look. But again, I'm all about, sometimes companies, like a lot of companies don't advertise their jobs or internships. So unless it's like a big company or known as like a rotational program, sometimes people decide even now, like last minute, or a small business will say, I really would like to have somebody come for the summer. I didn't put out an ad before. So I think you just need to be really clear about the kind of experience you want and where you want to go. And it's like networking with people to say, I'm looking for this kind of role or internship. Do you know of anybody, or can you support me? Or is this something that you're doing? And I think that's really that's the best way to navigate it. Again, you can look online, but you're going to have to get to a real person to make sure you get some opportunities there. Okay. Let me just address, these are really great questions. Okay, I think I got the ones from before. Hold on a second. So the question I have here is just wondering, hi Beth, what industries will be most negatively affected by AI or Chat GPT? I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not sure. I think we are really still trying to figure this out. It's happening so quickly. And it's funny, I've watched like some documentaries, and people of the creators of ChatGPT, I don't think they were intended it for it to be moving this quickly. I don't necessarily see jobs going away per se, but maybe things are just like accelerated. It's funny, I did see an article in the paper the other day about, whether there's some more back office things in terms of finance, or expediting like, rote processes, or whether it's on a trading desk. But I think there's still going to be, of course, people are not going away. We need to make decisions, and ChatGPT is not perfect. If you played around with it, there definitely needs to be some intervention to make sure it sounds like a person. But I think it's how do we use it in our everyday life to make things easier? Now, I know that there's a lot of different apps are trying to build it in, like where even whether in Microsoft Word, they'll say, okay, here's your email that you just got. And then it gives you a sample template of how to respond to the person that just sent you an email. Well, that would save me some time, at least setting up the structure, or at least just getting it set up. I don't know if it's going to, I don't know what the future holds. I think that I wonder too, but I think we should not ignore it. And I think we should be educated about it and embrace it where it can help optimize, different types of things, whether it's for the job search or our daily, everyday work. So that's a great question. Thanks for putting that in there. Okay. My grad is job hunting. What else can he be doing to either make money or gain skills to keep his spirits up? Okay. So I understand how frustrating, and I'll say sometimes depressing, the job search can be. Doesn't mean you're depressed. It just means it's hard, and you're not in school anymore, and you don't have your friends with you, and you feel like you're getting ghosted or rejected, or you're not getting the response. And it's really hard to stay focused. And we hear this over and over and over again because the job search process is very nebulous. And it's not like, school where you had the syllabus and it tells you what to do. That's what we try to do here in our programs, to give this really simple, structured, step-by-step approach. But I understand in general, if you're working on it on your own, it can feel very overwhelming. So a couple things. One, you should not be job searching 8 hours every day. That is just not realistic. That is not good for your mental health. It's great to create like a schedule or a structure. And in part of that schedule, you should probably have a part-time job. It doesn't have to be the job that you're going to go to for the rest of your life, but something where you feel productive, that you have to get up. It's great if you make a schedule, like I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to meet with friends, and then I'm going to work from 12 to 3 on my job stuff. And, and I'm going to change it around every day. You cannot do this full time. You need to put in time, but you cannot be doing it every day for 8 hours. It's not a good use of your time. And you want to be trying to talk to people and have conversations and make sure that you're putting yourself in a place, even socially, even with family occasions, whether it's graduation season or barbecue season. Talk to people, ask them, well, tell me, what do you do for a living? That uncle or that cousin that you never knew what they did. I mean, you need to be curious and start talking and saying, well, tell me, what are you doing? How'd you get there? What made you choose that? There are thousands of jobs and fields that our kids have never heard of, and a lot that are going to be changing in the future that many of us have never heard of. But you got to create a structure. You got to talk to people. You got to get yourself kind of in the process of doing it, but you can't do it every day. And I do think a part-time job is great. I do think a gym membership is helpful, or just getting active, because I know how tough it is. So that was a great question. Thanks for asking. Another question. So I'm not sure what I want to pursue. Do you help identify what careers could be a good match with someone's skill set? Yeah, so I'll share a little bit. So what we do is kind of two parts. One is we help young adults, so college students, recent grads, really anytime from sophomore year all the way up to like 5 years after graduation. And we really do two main things. One is we really help young adults to narrow down and figure out, what is it that I want to pursue? And how we do that is by helping them get clear on their skill set and looking at potential industries, jobs that help clarify that. And we have a process to help them get through that. Once they have that clarity, then we teach them, how do you navigate that process where you know exactly how to target the right people and the right companies, and how do you articulate your value in a way that you are the one to be chosen and that you are the one to be selected for the opportunity. And it's really about building confidence. So I'm really proud to say that on average, over 90% of our clients are getting the internship or job that they want. We don't guarantee employment, but what we are doing is we are really teaching what employers are expecting and helping young adults to present themselves in a way that's really professional and really polished. And it's not even, we're helping you get the first job and the second and the third. It's like, this is, as I tell people, this is the class that you should have had in school, but it's just not always being taught, which is why I created this organization to help young adults. So that's what we do. Yeah, we absolutely help you get clear. We're not going to tell you like, go do this, go do that. We really give you the tools that enable the self-discovery, to ask a lot of good questions, to be curious, to be aware. You have to read, trade journals or the newspaper, or pay attention to what's happening to help educate yourself as to what's out there. And if it speaks to you, and if you feel like it aligns with the skills that you have. So I hope that helped answer that question for you. This webinar recording will be available to everyone after the fact. So yes, after being here, I will absolutely make sure that you all get a copy of it. Let me just come back. I want to make sure I didn't miss any questions. I got the salary, indeed. Okay. So I think I hit mostly, I think I got all these. Oh, do I have a suggestion for a college graduate to change fields from their degree? So that is very common. I get that a lot, where someone will come out of school and they'll say, I just graduated and I know I studied this major, but I don't know if I really love it. I don't know if I'm excited about it. It's a hard thing to come to terms with based on the investment that's been made and the energy that's been made. A college major does not determine the job that you go towards. It can be a starting point, but it's not an ending point. So absolutely, we deal with this all the time, where someone says, I studied English, but I want to go into finance, or look, we help you figure out what is it that you want to move towards. And if you want to move towards that, what are some things that could help you get better clarity on it? Whether it's shadowing someone, whether it's having a micro internship, whether it's getting a certification, whether it's just volunteering, or maybe you don't even realize you've had the experience because you were part of a club, and that's what you talk about, or that's what you leverage. And I think, again, talking to people who are in that industry to understand what are the types of skills that are needed to be successful in that role. So absolutely, we see that all the time. It's so hard. How can someone who's at 17 years old pick a major and then say, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? I think if you were to go to LinkedIn and look at a sample of profiles of what people studied in school and what their major was and what their job is actually now, there's not always an exact correlation. It doesn't have to be this perfect fitting thing. So don't let that deter you from pursuing something that you feel more aligns with what you what you want to do. You absolutely learn and gain skills going to school. It's just, how do we find the right fit for yourself? I hope that helps answer your question. Let me just see what else we have here. Okay, job hunting. Okay, so level the question. So my grad will not apply for any jobs where they don't have all of the qualifications. Any tips for convincing them that they can apply for those jobs anyway? So that's what I talked about earlier. It's so funny. There's this feeling, and I see it and I hear it all the time, this feeling that like everything has to be perfect. And I don't know if it's because our kids, and again, I'm speaking to my kids too, that they grew up in a time where like everybody wins and everybody gets a trophy. And if you get the perfect grades, then this is what you get. And when it comes to a job, like the rules are just completely different. You don't necessarily have to have the best grades or be the smartest. It's maybe sometimes the someone who speaks the most clearly and is the most persistent, and they're not necessarily the most qualified. But there's companies write job ads that are not realistic, right? They write their dream person. They write their wish list. I have never met a person who ever meets 100% of the criteria. That's just not realistic, right? I want someone who's a great communicator and they're great at analytics and they have 7 years experience. It's just not, to have that person is like a unicorn. And I don't think that's a realistic thing. I think they put that out there as what they want, but that's not reality. As long as you have 60 to 70% that lines up, and what we recommend is print it out or, take it and put it side by side and highlight all the key with a highlighter, all the key skills that you see in the job requirement. And then you want to see with your resume, how many of yours line up? How many do you feel like kind of correlate? And if you can get at least over 50, 60%, you should apply. Again, but not in isolation. You should apply, and then you should reach out to the person who's in charge of HR on LinkedIn, and you should maybe find someone else who works there or maybe was a fellow alumni from LinkedIn. So you can't do it in isolation, but you absolutely do not need 100%. It's not realistic. And I don't think employers, I know employers are not expecting 100% match rate. That's just not how it works. So I hope that helps for your son. I don't know if he'll take my advice, but that's my advice. Okay. Okay, this is a long one. So let me okay. Grad finished school, took positions to make ends meet. And now he started off strong at university with internships, changed his major. Now he's contemplating getting an MBA or a second bachelor's, but would like to find something that will allow him to gain experience in finance and business. Challenge is how to frame your LinkedIn and your resume toward what you want in lieu of where you're working for the last 1.5 years. He's tapped into Indeed, didn't articulate that point as well, as companies are reaching out to him for positions that he's not interested in. He's capable and interested in lots of things, but is frustrated and isn't being given the opportunity. So, okay, that's kind of a lot here, but here's the thing. If you're in a job now and you're thinking same thing, it's the same thing as major. I studied this, but I don't really want to do this, or I'm doing this role, but I really want to pivot. You have to understand the skill set. You have to have these conversations, even if you're not, I'll say, pitching yourself or sharing all your skills. You have to understand what are the skills required to be in that new role. And is there something that you've done through an experience, a situation, a circumstance that you can correlate to this new type of job that you have? I'm guessing that there is, right? There's all kinds of things that happen at work and in school every single day, whether it is, did you show that you were a good communicator? Did you give a presentation? Did you analyze some information on a spreadsheet? Did you do some research? Did you write a paper? There's all kinds of experiences that our students have had that can correlate, and things that you've done even in your current work role that could look into a new one. You need to understand what are the skills that are required to be successful in that new role, and what can you match into from what you know now, and where are the gaps? What do you potentially need to learn? Maybe you need to learn, discounted cash flow, or maybe you need the MBA. Maybe you don't. You really gotta. The problem I think for so many of our kids is they start like making these decisions in their head. Like, well, I got to do this or I got to do that. But I always say, well, did you speak to anybody that told you that? No, nobody told me this. I've just decided this myself from whatever, social media or people, or we got to have conversations with people who are doing the actual job, because no amount of a Google search or internet search will help yield the answers the way a real person will. And I know that's scary because a lot of young adults are afraid to pick up the phone, have a conversation, because it's not something that's comfortable. So, you got to figure out where you want to go, and then figure out how to get there. So I hope that helps a little bit. Let me just make sure. Okay. All right. Let's see what else we have here. All right. Hi, Denise. So my son graduated during COVID and got a job in one engineering area, but wants to be in the discipline he graduated in. His current job doesn't use those skills. How can he craft his resume to fit his college major? I think it's the same kind of answer. Is it's not even how does he fit his resume. It's, clearly he has a job. And if you really want to focus on the major that he had, it's very interesting, even the way people organize their resume. So people seem to think you have to do everything in chronological order. But I would tell you that if you just retitle the middle section of your resume where it says experience and call it relevant experience, you can show the most relevant things on top, and then the next relevant and the next relevant. And it doesn't have to be in chronological order. If you want to show that he did research in a particular class and that aligns to the kind of job, you potentially could put that ahead of the current work experience. You have to see if it makes sense. But if what you want to draw your eye to, but you always want to make sure in the resume too, what did you accomplish? Are there metrics to show how you impacted the business or impacted an outcome or a result? And I think that's what really, draws someone eye. But again, I want to be clear. The resume is just one part of the entire process. It doesn't matter how incredible your resume is. It will not be the only reason for you getting hired, right? You need to have a great resume. You need to be able to communicate well. You need to be able to be prepared, persist. I mean, there's lots of different pieces. So it's great to have it. You can restructure it, but you also need to get in front of people who are in the role that you want to be in and ask them, or saying, hey, I'm doing this right now in my current engineering role. Maybe in his current job, he can take on other responsibilities that would leverage him and do better into the next role. So just some ideas or food for thought there. Hope that helps. Okay. Just want to make sure I have it here, because sometimes it doesn't always post them in the order that it was posted. All right, so we're almost at the hour. Let me kind of just share some additional kind of closing thoughts with you, because the interaction has been phenomenal and I really appreciate it. I think I just kind of want to leave you with a couple ideas if you didn't hear it already. What I want everyone to remember is that people hire people. Not AI, not ChatGPT, not a tracking system, not how amazing your resume is. People hire people. And that networking and building a relationship with somebody for them to get to know you is the most valuable and impactful way to get hired. Period. End of story. And 80% of jobs are found by referral. They're not found via online. So you need to, yes, can you apply online? Absolutely. Should you make sure your resume is great? Absolutely. But it cannot be done in isolation. You have to get into a conversation with someone. And I know that's the part that scares a lot of our young adults, which is why we enable them to feel confident to do it through our program. So I will offer to everyone that's on the call, if we have not had the pleasure of speaking, I know some of you are current clients and I'm thrilled that you're here. Welcome the opportunity to provide a complimentary consultation. It can be with you, your student, you can do it together or separately. And the link is in the Q&A. It's also on our website. There's a button that says, let's talk. We would love to talk to you and see how we can support you through that process. We provide both small group coaching as well as private one-on-one coaching. And that's how we help young adults to be successful to get through that process. If you are interested in learning more about our methodology and how we do this, I'd encourage you to get the book. It's called The Next Great Step. The Parent's Guide to Launching Your New Grad into a Career. It is on Amazon and everywhere that books are sold. If you want to just get familiar with some ideas, you can work with your young adult to step them through the process. That is why I wrote the book, so you can be empowered to have the right resource in it as well. The other thing I want to encourage you is we have all kinds of free resources. So I think it's in the Q&A as well. You'll see that I think we might have put it in there, but if not, yeah, it's on there. It is free resources. You click the link once. If you click download one resource, you get access to all of them, whether it's the resume checklist, the LinkedIn checklist, ACE the virtual interview, the college to career guide, career fair. There's plenty more. And I have lots of videos on my YouTube channel, on Instagram, on TikTok that talks about all of these issues that we have addressed this evening. So I really am so grateful for like the tremendous interaction. And I hope I was able to answer your questions. I think I got through them. If for some reason I missed any, feel free to email me directly. My email is beth@nextgreatstep.com. So BETH@nextgreatstep.com. But again, we welcome the opportunity to speak with you, to have a complimentary consultation, and if we can support you and your family any way possible. So again, if any of you had to leave early, this will be recorded. I will be sending out the link as well. But thank you so much for your time this evening. I hope you found it valuable. It was a pleasure answering your questions, and congrats to all the recent grads. Just get it. It's going to happen. You got to be persistent, and we're here to support you if you need the help. So have a great night, everyone. Take care.